right. We are live. Today's episode is basic preps. Now I got like a short list of simple things that anybody can get their hands on for little to no cost. Um, that they're going to need or that they would want to have on them in case we are faced with any kind of catastrophe or uh, limited government situation or anything like that. Now, again, this list is based on my preference. You know, you can always add to and take away and do what you want, but these are just basic things that I think that everybody should have. Um, you know, if you've got some of these things, great. If you don't, try to get them. You know, if you consider them to be valuable to you, you know, in that kind of situation, then go for it. Go out and get it. But a lot of the stuff you can actually kind of make at home, um, or you can improvise. Uh, some of the things you can't really improvise so much, you know, but uh, where you can improvise, you should. And the reason behind that is because you don't want to be spending a whole bunch of money on gear and equipment and not be spending money, you know, on other important things in the moment. Uh, you know, if you spend all your money prepping and buying all these different things for something that may or may not happen in the future, then, you know, you probably missed out on, you know, a nice dinner with your wife or taking your kid to Chuck E. Cheese or something like that, you know. So balance it out. That's why this list here is very rudimentary, very basic. Um, most of it's portable. You can take it with you on the go as needed. So if your plan is to bug out or something like that, you can carry all these things with you. Um, and they're kind of just general things that you should have around the house, anyways. That uh, you know, you might use for other purposes. But I guess I'll start with the list. I'll read the list off to you, and then I will go into detail. Um, what I think is the most cost-effective or appropriate way of going about getting these things, and give you a better description as to uh, what some of the purposes of these things are. Kind of a philosophy of use. Obviously, you're going to need food or rations. Um, next is the ability to filter water. You're going to need CamelBaks. They do cost a little bit of money, but you got to be able to carry water with you on the go. Next is a knife. Everybody needs a basic cutting tool. 100-mile-an-hour tape or 550 cord, or both. I'll get more into that later. You're going to need wet weather gear or weather appropriate gear. If you live in an environment where it doesn't rain very much, obviously you don't necessarily need wet weather gear, but you might want the appropriate attire for the weather. A compass. Compass is very important. And a fire starter kit. These are just some basic things that I know they sound like common sense, but everybody goes overboard with buying all these different things and items and gear and equipment and stuff like that they think they need when uh, when realistically they should probably just keep with the basics. You know what I'm saying? Um, if you go with the basics, you can't go wrong. Um, Food and rations. Now, there's all kinds of companies out there that sell bulk food storage and um, you know there's MREs, there's uh, freeze dried foods. There's a ton out there, and um, those are all good things to have, but um, if you can't afford thousands of dollars on a year's supply worth of food, then one of the things you can do is stock up on some basic things like uh, pancake batter. Buy the 5 pound bags of pancake batter that you get at the Costco or whatever. Um, Pancake batter goes a long way. Mixes with water. You can throw it in a bag. You can freeze it, and you can use it for later. Um, it lasts a very, very long time. Cheap food. Um, if I were to go buy stuff, there's ER bars and rations that you can get that have like 20+ year shelf life or something, and they've got like over 2,800 calories or 3,600 calories or something like that. Like the basically three meals worth in one package. Um, Not a bad deal. Um, if you can can your own food, can your own food, or learn how to do it. But the simplest thing is, like I said, pancake batter. Uh, it goes a long way. You can throw it in your pack, eat it in small chunks and pieces. It'll last a long time. People probably think I'm crazy because I'm like, oh yeah, yay for pancake batter, but no, for real. If you've got a deep freeze or something like that, just take your pancake batter, mix it up, throw it in Ziploc bags, and stack it in your deep freeze, and it'll last a long time. Then when the power goes out, you start taking it out, and you make yourself a fire and start making yourself some pancakes. And pancake batter is cheap. I mean, anything like that with chickens and pigs and stuff like that. So water filtration. All right. Um, filtration straws are fairly inexpensive, and most of them filter at least 300 gallons worth of water. You get a few of those, that's a good deal of water for, a family of 4. Um, but there's ways around that too. If you've got charcoal sitting around, you like to barbecue or something, you can break up charcoal. Or if you've made a fire and you've burned your wood, you can break up the charcoal off your wood and break it into small pieces and put it in a bandana or a light towel or something like that, and let the water run through it, and the charcoal will filter out the water. The charcoal is really good at filtering out toxins and uh, anything contaminated. It's an improvised way of filtering water to make it drinkable. Camelbacks. Yes, I use camelbacks in the military for water on the go. Um, and keeps you hydrated when you're working. So there's there's kind of the 3 main things. Now, none of these are in order of any particular way or anything like that, but the 3 main things: you got to be able to filter your water, you got to be able to stow it. So, and if you can at the very least stow it on you, then you'll be doing better off than somebody who can't. Having a Camelback will allow you to do that. A basic cutting tool, a knife. I mean, it's simple. It's self-explanatory. You've got to be able to cut. If you hunt or anything like that, I don't care if you're hunting a squirrel. You still got to cut it open. You still got to skin it. You know, not only that, it's a defensive weapon. So it's multi-purpose. Have a good knife. I'm not saying you got to go out there and buy like a, big crazy Rambo hunting knife or something. You just need something that's got a good edge on it, that's got a sustainable edge on it, and put it to good use when you need it. The next 2 things I got on here are 100-mile-an-hour tape and 550 cord. These 2 things are invaluable. All 100-mile-an-hour tape is duct tape on steroids. It's if you've got to, say, dress a wound, and you've got gauze or packing material for the wound, and you need that sucker on there real tight, and it doesn't have a band or ribbon or whatever strap to go around it, you can duct tape that thing on there. So having duct tape will help you with a variety of different things. Or 100-mile-an-hour tape, which is it's very similar to duct tape. It's not really any different, but it's useful as we find duct tape in our daily lives every day. It's going to be as useful, if not more useful, in a situation where resources are limited. And the 550 cord. 550 cord I used when I was in the military. I still use it today. I make sure I always have 550 cord. it has a ton of uses. If you need to tie things together, it has a tensile strength of 550 pounds, and it will give you a leg up when you need to improvise a tool or set a trap or set a snare or something like that. You know, having that cord is a serious advantage. It allows you to do everything from hunt and set traps to, you know, replace your bootlaces when they go out. So, multitude of uses, serious advantage. 100-mile-an-hour tape, 550 cord. Have to have those things. Wet weather gear, or, you know, uh, gear that is appropriate for your climate. I've lived in the extreme cold. I've lived in the extreme heat, uh, and everywhere in between. Um, I will be the first to tell you it sucks being soaked, walking miles on end, and having to deal with that because you don't have the proper wet weather equipment or gear. So, being able to stay dry, one, makes you more comfortable. Two, it frees up your ability to uh, maneuver more effectively because you're not adding that element of stress that comes with being drenched from water or rain or whatever. So wet weather gear is important. Um, Compass. Compass is one of those things that kind of is obvious but goes overlooked by some people. Um, you know, you don't. Everybody kind of knows their neighborhood, their city, their town, or whatever, and but a lot of them rely on GPS to get around everywhere they go. Literally, I do it myself. I'm guilty of it. I rely on GPS religiously. Um, but I've got a compass. I always know, even when I'm using GPS, which way is north, whether I'm looking at the machine or not. You know, I pay attention to which way is north all the time, and I know where I live in relation to where I'm going. These same principles that, you know, we kind of take for granted using GPS still apply in a situation where you don't have the use of a vehicle, or you're in a hostile environment, and you've got to get from one place to another quickly and not make any mistakes, not have to backtrack or anything like that, or miss a turn somewhere, whatever the case may be. Having a compass will help keep you oriented to where you're going and where you're coming from. And I mean a real compass, not one of these little compasses you get in a kit with some matches and cotton balls. I'm not talking about like that. I mean, you get yourself like a legit lensatic compass, something that you can shoot an azimuth with, because you may end up with some maps. And if you get a hold of some maps, then you can start planning your routes ahead of time, which gives you an advantage. We used to call it map recon. A fire starter kit. Yeah, for real. Got to be able to make a fire. We've been doing it for thousands of years. Got to be able to do it. And the easiest way is a fire starter kit. Whether it's you can get a fire starter kit in conjunction with a knife. It's got a fire stick that you run across the back of the blade, back side of the knife. Works really great. You can make fire starter kits yourself with Vaseline and dryer lint. Okay, like that right there. That's your kindling in a Copenhagen can. You know what I'm saying? You take some Vaseline on one side, your cotton balls, or you soak your cotton balls or your dryer lint or whatever in the Vaseline, gum them all up, and then you set them in your Copenhagen can or something. You carry that with you in your pocket, and you got an easy way to start a fire. All you need is a spark. Now, ideally, there's going to be lighters all over the place, but you know, eventually all the lighters are going to run out of fluid, so you're going to need like an actual fire stick or something like that to start a fire, a flint. Um, that's about it for the list. They're just some basic things. They really are. Um, these are simple things that I've used in across multiple environments, um, and I've not suffered because of them, not because of my gear or equipment. So uh, it looks like we have 2 viewers. Is there anything that y'all would like to chime in on, add to, or take away from, or you're welcome to? Well, maybe not. All right. That's really all I wanted to go over today was just a few simple items. I mean, there's other important things out there. You could ask why I'm not talking about medical gear and medical equipment and weaponry, because those are not the things that go overlooked. It's obvious that you need medical supplies. I carry a trauma kit in my truck. I carry a trauma kit in the house. Um, you know, should be relatively common sense. Um, but I can go into some of the details about those. You need to be able to dress a wound, whether it's a laceration or a puncture wound or a uh, the cavitation from a bullet. You've got to be able to deal with that. You've got to be able to stop the bleeding. You have to stop the bleeding. And in all reality, you've got less time than that because shock sets in relatively fast, and once shock sets in, depending on the severity of the wound, uh, things could go both ways. Either the bleeding could slow down or the bleeding could pick up even faster. And if it picks up even faster and you don't have it dressed properly and it's tight and pressure is being applied, then you're just wasting that golden hour. So yeah, like a 10-minute rule. But so you got to be able to dress a wound. You've got to be able to establish an airway. If the individual, if the victim or patient is not breathing, there's forcible ways to establish an airway. There's there's the head lift, tin chilt method to try and open and clear an airway. Um, but you don't necessarily want to do, like, there's so many things. If there's a back injury, you don't necessarily want to do that, stuff like that. But or spinal injury. Um, but some basic medical equipment, medical supplies. You need to be able to sterilize a wound. Uh, you need to be able to cut through clothing. Um, quick clot is something that is seriously good stuff. Uh, get an Asherman's chest seal. I mean, that way you can help alleviate, a tension pneumothorax. Um, there's you can buy medical kits that are like literally tailored to just any variety of situations or injuries. Um, some of them are quite expensive, so I mean, I don't recommend going out and just buying, like, the biggest, baddest, aid bag. But I mean, if you can, go for it. But first aid equipment is important. I keep first aid equipment around, not just first aid, but trauma supplies. Um, in case anything happens, it's serious. And weapons. Weapons are obvious. Like, you've got to be able to defend what you have, defend your family. Um, there's a lot of guys out there that have umpteen million guns just because they can. I don't think in any real world situation 80% of it would do them any good. It just doesn't make any sense. Not to me. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a difference between having a one person with a variety of weapon systems at his disposal, and say the practical situation being there is a variety of weapons for multiple people to use as applicable. So, for instance, if I had a squad of guys with a variety of different weapons, then they would have a variety of different roles to fill in the use of those weapons. But one guy sitting there choosing, oh, I'm going to use my Mossberg 500 today, instead of using whatever would be considered a primary defensive weapon. Now, if that is his primary defensive weapon, then that's make sense. But if he's just picking and choosing through, like, it just doesn't make any sense. There's no point to having that many firearms unless you're going to build an army. Which, if that's what you're going to do, that's fine, whatever. But then each of those weapons would have a role, so it would then make sense. But hoarding and stockpiling weapons. Now, here's a situation where there is the only situation I can think of where it is necessary to have so many weapons would be if you were to go and bury those weapons somewhere in different areas within your town or city or whatever, and stash them away so that when you're on your routes gathering resources, food, and supplies, you have access to backup weapon systems along your routes. That would be practical. But again, I don't plan on parting with my weapon at all, and I don't necessarily need any more. Do I want more? Yes, of course I do. But I don't necessarily need 20 guns or something like that. Like, that's just asinine. But whatever weapon you go with, make sure you're effective with it. Make sure that you're trained with it. And that you've practiced and practiced and practiced. And this gets expensive. I know this does. The cost of ammo is ridiculous. Like, I mean, it's not too bad, but it is still high. And, it takes years of training to get really, really good at shooting with your weapon system. Now, not to say that there aren't people out there that are crack shots. There's people out there that just, they pick up a firearm and they are just proficient almost right out the gate. They just got a knack for it. Other people need more coaching, need more training, need more rounds down range. So everybody's different. But make sure you have a weapon system. Make sure you're proficient with it. And when I say weapon system, I don't mean a battle axe. Okay, I mean that sounds cool and all, but some people may think like, oh, I can have all these improvised weapons and stuff like that. Yes, you can, but when the ball drops, it's not going to be a fight with swords right away. That doesn't come till after everybody runs out of ammo. And then you're going to need your battle axe. But it's going to be primarily a gunfight. And I'm not saying, like I've kind of hinted at before, like yesterday's episode or whatever, or my last episode, I discussed the different ways that things can happen, whether it's government versus government, or us versus the government, or us versus a foreign power, or whatever. Those situations are going to be gunfights. There's no middle ground. There's no fair fighting anymore. And then there's something that something that gets kind of overlooked is how you stow your ammo. Now, some people just keep it in ammo boxes and stuff like that, and they stack it on a shelf or put it in their closet, or they've got a wall in their garage, or they've got bins and it's full of ammo cans. You know, keep keep ammo in your car. If you've got a spare box of ammo, spare can of ammo, keep it in your car. Keep one in all your cars. You're not gonna be. Don't be the guy that when things happen, you're loading up the vehicle. Now, if you've got to download the vehicle because of an EMP strike or something and the vehicle no longer runs, then you got to download the vehicle. But if that's not the case, then don't don't be that guy that's loading up after the fact, because then everybody's going to see what you got. Uh, I highly recommend, if you're going to go with a weapon system, go with the AR-15. Highly recommend it. Uh, so, I mean, any rifle is good. Any rifle that does the job is good. But the versatility of the M16, M4, AR-15 platform is outstanding. Um, and there is such a variety of AR-15s that you can get, ranging in price from $400, $500, all the way out to $5, $6, $7,000. You know, um, now do I recommend spending that much? I don't recommend it. Um, I'll tell you, on my weapon system, I spent a lot of money on a very specific weapon system. Uh, but I will say this. I will say stay away from the $400 or $500 AR-15s. Do they work? Do they work fine? Yes, they do, but they will not last as long. You will start to see failures to fire. You will start to see failures to eject or feed as time goes on. Some of those $400 AR-15s don't even have chromoly barrels. Um, so you do get what you pay for. Uh, you can't go wrong with an FN, Fabrique Nationale. An FN AR-15 is probably about the standard. Like, you can't go wrong with it. It's military grade, mil spec or whatever, like most AR-15s. But I've had personal experience with FN weapon systems, and I'll tell you that they are top notch, and they're not overly priced. They are worth every penny. Um, let's see. We're getting close to the 45-minute mark. Oh, if you end up spending the time and the money to go shooting and train your family, everything you know, they got to know. Now, I'm a little guilty of this. My significant other, she is trained to shoot. She's been trained. She's been shooting her whole life, so it wasn't a far stretch for her to be excellent with a weapon system. Um, but there are things that I have yet to teach her, uh, and that's my fault. So I've got to get on that. But uh, that'll come in time. So we went over our list of some basic supplies and gear. We talked a little bit about first aid. Um, we talked a little bit about weapon systems. I will say this about the first aid equipment. At the very least, get a tourniquet. At least one. They are vital. Well, I think I'm going to call it a day. I want to thank you guys or for those of you that are tuned in. I appreciate that. If anybody else catches this on the back end, I appreciate that too. Hopefully somebody will find any of this information at all useful, then that's great. If not, then maybe it's all common sense, like I said before about different things. But if we're at the time now where it's like, seriously, we need to start thinking about these things. The population needs to start thinking about these things. They need to start waking up a little bit and saying, "Hey, what if I can't do today, or what if I can't do tomorrow what I'm doing today, and it all comes to a stop? What do I do then?" That's really kind of, that's what prepping is about. It's about tomorrow. Today you prep, tomorrow you go into action. So, but I promise my channel here is not going to be all about prepping and all that stuff. I mean, we'll probably get into like current events and news and stuff like that, and I'll start pointing out, things that are going on around the world that I feel people should pay attention to, or at least that I do, in order to stay up to date on kind of how things are going geopolitically and how that affects us back at home. Anyways, this is my third broadcast. If you comment or something, I don't care. Talk to y'all later. Out.